Hello and welcome to this bonus episode of the Filmumentaries Podcast. I'm Jamie Benning, your host. Back in early 2025, this year, I spoke to filmmaker Paul King about his documentary Shine On, a love letter to the shining filming locations at Elstree Studios. Well, Paul is back, and this time he's turned his attention to another fascinating piece of British pop culture history. His new short documentary, Beneath London, the story of alien war, explores the bizarre and brilliant alien-themed walkthrough experience that briefly took over London's Trocadero in the 1990s. If you were around then, you might remember the buzz. Maybe you even dared to go in. I didn't. I was too scared. But Paul did, and that early brush with Weyland-Yutani Marines left a lasting impression. In our conversation, we dig into the origin of alien war, how it managed to get official backing from Fox at the time, and why it deserves a bigger place in the genre fan memory. We also talk about how Paul uncovered rare footage, tracked down key players, and stitched it all together into a compelling 20-minute short documentary that honestly is begging to be expanded into a feature-length documentary. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Paul King, and as usual, I'll be back at the end for a little bit more jabbering on.
This was a simple idea, but it blew up into something we could only dream of.
Nothing like this had ever been done before. The pressure to get it right was huge.
Every newspaper and media outlet covered it throughout the world.
It definitely wasn't like any job I'd ever done before. I'm carrying a great big pulse rifle and I'm getting paid to do this.
We would have guests screaming, crying, hyperventilating.
You know, everybody likes to be scared, and that is the premise of Alien War, was let's get scared.
Paul, thanks for coming back on the podcast. I think, what was it, January? I think you were on.
Gosh,
your Shine On.
It was. I think it was. Yeah. No, thanks.
Well, I
for
think
having
that
me back.
maybe I interviewed maybe in December. I can't remember, but good to have you back anyway, and great to see the new documentary. I watched it again this morning, Beneath London, the story of alien war. Alien War, I remember it. I never went to it. I was terrified of the idea, but I remember it being in the Trocadero. Did you go back then?
So I went to it twice.
Did you?
Once, as this is sort of like when I was like 13 years old. I think there was a picture that was in the paper, because obviously this is pre-internet as well. So early 90s, there was a picture in the paper where they had the alien queen in Piccadilly Circus.
Yeah.
Massive Aliens fan I was at the time, so went up. And then it was around the time when you're at school and you're doing work experience, you know, and you go, I don't know, like work at WH Smith's, like or news agents or something in town. But me and my best mate Dave wrote to Alien War and asked if we could go work there. They said yes. It all fell apart at the last minute because of some insurance problem. But the second time we went, we got invited up for the day and got like a behind the scenes tour. That's sort of how it all started, really.
And how did the film come about? Is it just something you fancied doing and started to dig, or did it come to you? Like, what were the circumstances?
Well, I remember you asking me last time, what would a next project be? And I think I was saying along the lines of, you know, if there was a treasure trove of a good story, which, I mean, I didn't really have too much in mind at the time, but this was sort of floating around maybe in the background. But what had happened was I saw on Facebook that this guy who I'd met 30 years ago at Alien War, who was one of the Marines and then became, I think, one of like the managers there as well, was running a Facebook group, the Alien War fan club. And went on there, had a look, and I just posted loads of pictures and I told him the story, you know, about the work experience thing there. And we just started chatting. and then just started saying like, gosh, there is a really good story in here to be told about one of the first horror, definitely in Britain, one of the first horror walk-through attractions that was like something that was scary at that kind of level, that was like playground chat, really, for so many people.
Yeah, because I'm a little bit older than you, and I remember it was the sort of time when I was able to go into London with friends and, you know, go to the Trocadero, go to the arcade, go and buy clothes, all of that kind of stuff, you know. And I remember the fact that Alien War was there was sort of tantalising to me and my friend Steve that I used to hang around with at the time. But at the same time, because there was so much sort of unknown surrounding it, like you just called it a walk-through experience. I mean, we sort of had no idea what it was. Like, we just knew that you were going to be terrified, right? So I think we both just bottled it. I think we were going to do it one day and we just totally bottled it. But it was a rare thing then, wasn't it? Those sorts of experiences didn't happen outside of like a theme park or a fun fair. You weren't really having those sort of visceral experiences, because by the look of it, I mean, it was a hell of a visceral experience walking through corridors. Some bits were from the movie as well, like some of the sets.
They were, so they had a lot of the sets in there from Aliens.
Yeah.
And you know, some original bits. I think like they had the seats from the dropship were in there.
Yeah.
Some of the wall panels were originals. And then they had a lot of the molds of like the alien costumes, the Marines costumes, the guns.
Yeah.
And I think it had people who had worked on the films as well, like involved in it.
Yeah, so there was that sort of authenticity, wasn't there, that they were aiming for. So, I mean, you could probably describe it better than me. So just tell us what the experience was for people when they paid their, whatever it was, 10, 15 quid. Probably less.
It was about half that, I think.
Was it about 6 quid? Yeah, there is a shot actually, isn't there, with somebody ringing it up on the till? Yeah.
Yeah. And you look at that and go, God, that would be like 4 times the price.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
So roughly, this is from my memory, and most of it being jogged from making this film. It was basically you went in there, sort of, you were going around a Weyland-Yutani research facility to see the life cycle of these aliens that they've captured. And then as you go in there, you're being given a tour by a Marine, and then you're being told, right, one of these things has escaped, and we need to get you all the way to the end. We're going to have to go through the base though, and each room we go into, we're going to have to seal it and lock it behind us, and you're going to have to play a part in it. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what sort of makes it different, even from a lot of horror walkthrough or just walkthrough attractions now, where you know, normally you'll go in and it would just be, you know, you yourself like walk through like from one room to the next room to the next room, but this had a story to it as you went through. So you properly felt immersed within this, and you felt like you were in the film and terrified as well.
Yeah, it's sort of, I mean, I can imagine the secret cinema people were probably inspired by Alien War, because I don't think there's ever really been anything like it since, in terms of a big franchise. Of course, we have Disney World and Disneyland and all those things where they try and recreate the sets, but to recreate the sort of experience of being in the movie is quite different, isn't it? And you found some amazing footage. You have these audition tapes of the Marines, these kind of out-of-work actors trying to get a gig, and they're the tour guides, essentially. And also these really good audio interviews that you've got. How much of that stuff did you have to like hunt for, and how much of it came to you?
Well, so the Marine that I was telling you about, so it's Doug McCarthy. So he is now like a senior special effects supervisor in movies. So it was with him that I met up, and he said, "Look, I've got this footage from the 2 guys who started it, from John and Gary, and some of this is out there on the internet. Some of it's never been seen before. A lot of it is very, very bad quality." And some of it a lot better, where they'd had it sort of like professionally shot and documented. But so much of it was that I think this had kind of come from Gary on. This is Gary Gillard, who's one of the co-founders of it. Of going right, he wanted everything at the time documented about this sort of the setup of it and how it's going to come together, because they weren't people who were massively in this in this world. They were very much film fans who had this crazy idea, got 20th Century Fox on board.
Amazing.
By quite a blag, which is a story we haven't told in this version, but I'd love to tell. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So they had a documentary crew following the beginnings of this, really.
Yeah, because you see it from the sort of ground up. You see them actually building it and talking through it. And then you see like the launch, and Sigourney Weaver turns up and Lance Henriksen's there. And just having that kind of stamp of approval from those people must have been amazing for those guys at the time. I mean, I'm sure they felt out of their depth at times as well.
Totally. I mean, I think I think they're in their 20s.
Yeah.
At the time, they'd started this in Scotland to begin with, but on a lot smaller scale. Then it went to Bournemouth, like as a bit of a touring exhibition, and I think possibly before that to another venue, maybe in Aberdeen, and then it got its home in the Trocadero in Piccadilly Circus.
You imagine trying to rent that space out these days. It's impossible. That's the great thing about this documentary, is it 1993, isn't it? It's really sort of a point in time where all of these things sort of converge to enable this thing to happen. The drive of the two guys that wanted to do it, 20th Century Fox saying yes, all the bits and bobs being put into place. And like I said, some of the stars kind of endorsing it. Funnily enough, I spotted a friend in the film.
No.
There's a guy with a microphone. I can't remember what he says. He says, like, how was the experience? And he goes like that. He's got like a big sort of fringe across his forehead.
Yes, yeah.
That's Wayne Imms, who runs soundstage events in Brighton. So he a bit like my podcast in a way, I guess. He invites people down whose work he's admired. So he interviewed Peter Sushitsky, the Empire Strikes Back DOP recently, and Walter Murch as well. But yeah, it was Wayne, because he used to work for BBC for a while.
Okay.
So yeah, I spotted him in that, which is quite funny. But I love that, I have seen a few of those clips, I think, in the past, like around and about, but it's the way you put them together, of course, to make this film. And I think you've done a really deft job of putting it together to create that story. I got the impression from speaking to you before that I think you mentioned it just a minute ago as well, that you want to kind of expand upon this and potentially make a feature.
That is the plan now, I think, because initially with this, very much like the Shining film, it started off as we're thinking a 3 to 5 minute project. They're totally different beasts, because obviously the Shining one is a story that lots of people know about, and you don't have to simplify it so much.
Yeah.
Like what we were getting at, because it's already got a reference point. Alien War was something that not a lot of people now, 30 years later, know about, apart from a lot of diehard fans. And so within this version, we wanted to do a trailer originally, just saying these are the best bits of it. And then again, like the Shining film, I got a bit caught up in it and went, I'm hearing all these really good stories and I want to lengthen this out. So made it into, this like 20 minute film, but which is made just about the experience, and it's and just London. Whereas there's so much more of the story to tell, and there's so many more people to hear from, with some great stories, which just sat in there at the moment would feel totally out of place.
Right. Yeah.
So I think there's like a good sort of like 60 to 90 minute film to be told about Alien War. I mean, the biggest comment I'm seeing now it's out is bring it back.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing if you were the catalyst for that? I mean, because the thing is, the films have gone on. It's not like, there was Alien 3, I guess, at the time, and it just ended, and it was done and dusted. We've had multiple movies since, spin-offs, we've had crossovers, all sorts. And it's such an iconic thing, isn't it? That Alien, that xenomorph is just such an iconic thing. And I think people would pay, you said a minute ago, 4 times as much, probably pay 10 times as much these days, to have that experience. So, cynically, if there is money in it, then somebody will probably find a way to do it. But that would be amazing if you were the catalyst for that.
I mean, that would be incredible. I mean, I know that like John and Gary, having thoughts about it and early talks about it, but I'm sort of trying to I'll sort of like keep out of that side, and if they do it, I'd love to document it. If it comes together, and try and bring it, bring the past to the present with what's happening now. But yeah, who knows on that?
Always looking for another story. Hey, that's just the way you're built.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I'm because, but obviously both films are pretty sort of based on nostalgia, or based on things that I've got an interest in from from about a similar age, from sort of like 12, 13. So I think I'm probably going to run out of things that I was properly into at 12 or 13 to make films about.
Yeah, that's the problem with the nostalgia business, isn't it? It's we're running out of topics to tackle, especially when there are those groups going and making those big sci-fi documentaries, and the Thing documentary and the Alien documentary, and the Jaws. There's how many Jaws ones have there been? I'm due to be going to Martha's Vineyard in June to shoot more of our Joe Alves documentary, because it's the 50th anniversary of Jaws, and although I've just been cancelled off a job that was going to get me out to the States, I'm going to have to do it, because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get, Carl Gottlieb, Joe Alves, and a few, there'll be Jeffrey Kramer will be there as well, just to get them in the vineyard, probably for the last time in their lives, talking about something that happened more than 50 years ago. We're the people that have to sell these stories, Paul. That's the thing, We can't leave it up to the studios to do.
I'd love to have been out there for that.
Yeah, no, it's going to be good. One of the terms I like in the documentary is that kind of total reality as opposed to virtual reality. These days, I think all the experiences, we kind of rely on technology, whether it's like the Sphere in Las Vegas, or if it's going to the IMAX, we're heavily reliant on this technology. There was technology involved in Alien War, right? I mean, they had things where... Well, you can explain what happened when they had the guns. How did they fire all that stuff off?
Yeah, so they had. I mean, this is my sort of basic secondhand knowledge on that, but I think it's sort of about at the time the technology which they were using was pretty high end. So they had this gunfire system, which is totally the wrong term for it, but they had this system where basically they had the pulse rifles from Aliens, and the triggers on that would then set off the speakers, and I think that, and then somehow tied into it as well was the lighting. So every time, because I think this was the big thing, especially when it came to the second film, when it came to Aliens, if you saw those creatures in full bright light, they didn't look that great, because Cameron had turned it way more into sort of like leotards with sort of prosthetic pieces on top of those, rather than a whole suit. So every time we did see the alien, and the guns to the lighting would set off the strobes, and there were a few robotics throughout as well. I tell you what, I saw the best description of it, or a brilliant way of putting it. I read the other day, it was somebody had done a review online, and they said, because it is hard to describe an event to somebody who's never been there and will never experience it, and only see sort of clips of it. But he said in his review, imagine the Jaws ride in America, but instead of being in a boat with all the other passengers, you have to swim across the lake. There are sharks coming at you, and your fellow passengers keep being dragged under the water, and there's blood coming up, and you have to get to the other side. And he said that's what Alien War was like. And I was like, that's a great way of putting it, and that is how you felt in there. It was,
and exactly the reason I didn't do it, Paul. That's why. I did actually see Jaws once in a swimming pool. I was on a lilo, and there were some people sodding about with fins and stuff. That was enough to sort of put me off going in the water for a little while. I would have loved to have done it. I just think, I mean, it took me years to even get used to watching those movies. It's probably only in my late 20s that I would be comfortable watching those movies and appreciate them for what they are. I'm just one of those people that really gets sort of taken away by a horror film, and it wouldn't. I would have been one of the fallen. They would have had to close it early. I would have been taken. I'm surprised nobody had a heart attack in that experience.
Well, I think so. I heard Doug McCarthy was saying that I think the worst they ever got, obviously they had a few knocks and bruises because there were bits in it where you were running in there as well. But they said they had one person in there who they thought was having a heart attack because he was so terrified when he came out. But it wasn't. I think it was just the shock and the terror of it. But I think that's the worst. The worst that it ever got to. It was just lots of scream. I mean, that was one of the genius things about it is that as you were queuing up, the queuing area is the exit as well. Yeah. So as you're queuing to go in, the people run out from the last scene within Alien War, and they're screaming. Yeah, screaming and laughing,
Yeah, I guess it's a bit like when you're queuing for a roller coaster. I guess you see the people who've got wet, or they're laughing, or they're crying, or whatever, and you just don't know what you're going to be in for with the experience. No, that was a very, very sort of canny idea to have that people filtering in and filtering out in the same space. Where can people watch the film, Paul?
So I've put this one up on my YouTube. So it's youtube.com/@PaulKing_TV. Mm-hmm. Or if you just search for Beneath London, the story of Alien War, it'll come up.
The interviews you've got with some of the people that worked on the experience, they're real characters in themselves. I mean, there's a couple of them that really stand out, of course. I mean, you must have had a fun time talking to those people about their time there.
Big time. We've got Doug, who I mentioned, who's a brilliant, and he's been sort of like him and his wife have been a real sort of driving force behind this film coming together. The other Marine that we've got is Maria Bergman, who was the one who's everybody said just looked like Vasquez.
Yes.
At the time, she was saying so. She's now a tour guide abroad. So she said, like, she's pretty much doing exactly the same as she was doing then, but without all the aliens popping out everywhere. But like I was saying, though, right in the beginning of this, because it was just going to be this 2-3 minute film, it was, and more of like a trailer, really. So I kind of had in my head already the lines that I wanted them to say, like you would hear in a trailer, like the best bit moments. And then the more I started speaking to them and going, oh, that's how it became longer when I was just hearing their stories and going, there's some great things to learn here and to hear here. I mean, the other, another big thing about Maria, which we didn't go into in the film, is that aliens, and Alien in particular, is that she is a massive, massive fan of those movies. Right. Like she has tattoos. She's a huge Giger fan. So meeting Sigourney Weaver for her was just like,
I bet.
Like blew her mind.
Awesome. So last time we spoke about Shine On, your documentary about the Shining filming locations at Elstree Studio. Obviously you assembled a great little team there with the visual effects and the editing and all those other things. Did you sort of have a bit of a continuity for the crew involved in this film as well?
Yeah, there was to a certain extent. I think it was, obviously this is on a lot smaller scale than the Shining film, because we've done it with audio interviews instead of on camera. So it was mainly like an archive edit job. But we got Andrew Jones back, that's the same style of poster. Same guy who did the poster for Shine On, did the poster for this. It's just something about his style which is brilliant. They kind of look like the books that you would imagine getting in airports in like the 80s or something on the covers. And then I got Andrew Scullin, who's sort of like one of my oldest friends, who did a lot of the music on Shine On, and he's come back and done some of the tracks within this. Oh, and Greg Johnson, who has done a lot of he did a few of the graphics on Shine On. He came back on this as well and did some of the graphic work. And then we're just hoping that, if we get it to this next stage, again, everybody will come back and we'll do a bigger, longer, better version is the dream.
Well, listen, I really enjoyed it. It was another one of those ones, I think, as I said to you with The Shining, where I thought, why didn't anybody else do that already? Like, why did I not do that? Because it feels like a story so ripe to tell. And I do hope that, all the things fall into place for a feature version, because I do think it definitely has legs. There's definitely stories there. You can tell. The film finished, the credits were kind of rolling, and I was like, damn it, I want another, 40 minutes here. That would have been great.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wish you luck with that. And I know what it's like. Sometimes you have these ideas and they don't come to fruition, but you never know. This thing could work out.
Fingers crossed, man. That is totally the hope with this. There's some good stories there to be told.
Good. Thanks again to Paul for coming back on the podcast. I really enjoyed hearing how Beneath London, the story of Alien War came together. There's a link in the show notes, and I genuinely hope he gets the chance to expand it into a feature-length documentary. There's clearly so many more stories waiting to be told about that bizarre and brilliant attraction. As for me, I'm currently gearing up for my trip to Martha's Vineyard to film more material for Not Your Average Joe, our feature documentary about legendary production designer Joe Alves. It's really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get out there to Martha's Vineyard and capture interviews with Joe in the place that he originally recce'd in the early 70s, and as well as others who were involved in Jaws. There's going to be a few of them out there. Mr. Gottlieb is out there. Jeffrey Kramer's out there. There's a few other people as well. Back at the original shooting location. I mean, I'm going to be excited just to be there as a fan, but it's going to be a busy week. We've got lots going on. We're about £900 away from our goal, which will just about cover our costs of flying to Martha's Vineyard, hiring a car, and paying for accommodation, which is insanely expensive that particular week. You'd think that those billionaire property owners were rich enough, but it appears not. Any donation, even if you've got £5, big or small, would be hugely appreciated, and it's all going to go straight into that week of shooting there and covering our costs. We've had to hire some extra little bits of equipment. I've had to buy an external sound recorder as well because we're having to go very light, guerrilla style filmmaking. You can find a link in the show notes, or you can go and search Google for GoFundMe and Joe Alves and you'll find it easily. Thanks for listening to this bonus episode, and I'll be back soon with more conversations from behind the scenes of your favourite films.